ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שהכל נהיה בדברו. Our greatest commentator, Rashi, says the following: why does the Torah begin with the creation of the world? Well, why not? It's very logical that you should begin with the beginning. Well, he says something apparently which is the following. What is the Torah? Is the Torah a history book? Is it a book about astronomy, geology? Is it a science book? No. The Torah is a book of morality, of instructions, of how you should behave, of norms, telling man what he should do in this world. So the Torah should really begin with the first instruction God gave to the Jewish people, and that was in Egypt. HaChodesh Hazeh is the beginning of that paragraph. It says that they had to take a lamb and offer it as a sacrifice, and with the blood paint on their doorposts so the angel of death should skip the Jewish homes. This is where the Torah should have begun. Why does it begin with Bereshit? So he answers, Rashi himself says, this is to tell us that God is the owner of this world. Why? Because he created it. It's his. So therefore, he could give part of the earth to the people that he wanted. He wanted to give Eretz Israel, the place where the state of Israel is today, to the Jewish people, and he can do it. Why? Because he created the world. In other words, it's God's will because it's his earth, and this is why the Torah begins with Bereshit. My teacher, Rabbi Soloveitchik, says the following, it's very interesting. But we see that in the beginning there were 7 nations that were living in what is today the state of Israel. When the Jews came out of Egypt, they had to fight, had to conquer the promised land. In other words, there were people living there already. In other words, that God had decided to give it first to other people. Well, he says that is so. In effect, God decided to give it to those 7 people. But he wanted to demonstrate that they didn't behave the way it should be, and that's holy land. The land of Israel has special characteristics, and he wanted to show that those 7 nations did not live up to moral standards that this earth required. He says, well, why did those 7 people get in that place to begin with? He says, because immorality forever looks for sacredness. It cannot tolerate sacredness. It tries to conquer what is sacred already. Take a look, he says, when the Romans destroyed the temple, what did Titus take? He took a menorah, a very important religious symbol, with him to Rome. Immorality looks forever for what is sacred. Why does it look for what is sacred? Because immorality knows that as long as there is holiness in this world, there won't be any room for immorality. Because holiness teaches you that there is a different way. In other words, immorality would like to govern this world, but it can't do it because there are some people that are very sensitive and know what is sacred, know what is the real path that you have to follow. He says maybe that is one of the roots of anti-Semitism, that there are many peoples that would like to conduct themselves in a certain way, and then comes the Jewish people on the scene of the world and teaches you that there is a different way of doing things. Many people say the Jews introduced the notion of guilt in this world. Without the Jews teaching you the 10 Commandments and certain moral principles, we could have been living in a life, in a world that is much easier. You take whatever you want. If there's a woman that you like, if she has a man, well, you kill the man, you take her for yourself. It would be a free-for-all for everybody. Came the Jewish people with a certain set of norms. In other words, the immorality that reigned to begin with cannot tolerate holiness in this world, and is always attracted to it. Why? Because it wants to conquer it. It wants to eliminate it. So what we have to do is the opposite. We have to make sure that morality, that sacredness is eventually what dominates in this world. This is what the prophet saw. The day will come when God will be one, when all the nations of the world will recognize there is only one God, a God that demands a life of morality from every human being, not of the Jewish people in particular, of every human being. And that day, that will be the day of the Lord. That will really be converting the world into a real paradise.